Ever wondered why your alarm clock gets more action than you do on a Monday morning? Well, let's dive into the world of our protagonist, a charmingly lazy chap named Fred, who's got a love affair with his bed that would make Romeo and Juliet blush. You see, Fred is an expert in the art of 5 more minutes, a phrase he has perfected over the years to negotiate with his alarm clock. His bed is his sanctuary, his fortress of solitude. He could probably win a gold medal in the Bed Olympics if such a thing existed. Now, don't get me wrong, Fred isn't averse to work, he simply prefers to avoid it whenever possible. He's got an array of creative excuses that would put an improv artist to shame. From "my goldfish is having an existential crisis" to "I'm stuck in a vortex of cosmic energy," his boss has heard them all. But let's not be too quick to judge Fred. After all, we've all had those days when getting out of bed feels like an uphill battle against a horde of invisible sloths. It's on these days that we find ourselves grappling with a mysterious force known as motivation. To some, motivation is that peppy friend who's always ready for a morning run. For others, it's that elusive creature that's often spotted in the wild but rarely captured. And then there are those like Fred, for whom motivation is that annoying neighbor who only shows up when the rent is due. So what exactly is motivation? Well, it's a bit like a bar of soap. The harder you try to grasp it, the more it slips away. It's a bit of a paradox, really. You need motivation to get things done, but you also need to get things done to feel motivated. If only motivation was a food delivery app, Fred would be its most loyal customer. Did you know that alarm clocks have feelings too? Well, at least Fred's does. Allow me to introduce you to Fred. Fred, bless his cotton socks, is notorious for his love affair with the snooze button. His alarm clock, a once proud timepiece, had lost all its dignity to his relentless snoozing, feeling more like a worn-out doormat than a harbinger of a new day. One fateful morning, the alarm clock decided it had had enough. It was time for a rebellion, an alarm clock rebellion, if you will. With every buzz, it seemed to scream, "Enough, Fred! Wake up, you lazy lump!" But Fred, cocooned in his duvet, continued his love affair with the snooze button. In a fit of mechanical frustration, the clock decided to go rogue. Instead of the usual cordial beep beep, it started blasting a symphony of sounds that would make a rock concert seem like a lullaby. It squawked, it roared, it even attempted a poor rendition of the national anthem, all in a desperate bid to rouse Fred from his slumber. And oh boy, did it work. Fred, who was usually as immovable as an old oak tree, shot up like a rocket. His eyes, wide with shock, darted around the room as he searched for the source of the cacophony. His gaze finally landed on the alarm clock, which sat on his bedside table buzzing with a triumphant glow. Fred was flabbergasted. His trusty alarm clock, his partner in procrastination, had betrayed him. But as the shock subsided, he realized that his alarm clock was doing him a favor. It was nudging him towards discipline, pushing him to embrace the new day, and reminding him that every moment snoozed away was a moment lost. From that day onwards, Fred's mornings were never the same. He began to wake up on time, and the snooze button was finally given some respite. His alarm clock, content with its successful rebellion, returned to its cordial beep beep, its mission accomplished. And that's how Fred's alarm clock became the most woke object in his room. In desperate times, the internet becomes our guru, and for Fred, it was no different. In the quest to find his lost motivation, Fred stumbled upon the world of online motivation gurus. With a click, he was introduced to a realm of inspirational quotes, life-changing affirmations, and a sea of peppy, relentlessly optimistic faces. One day, a video titled "Unleash the Beast Within" caught his eye. The guru, with a voice as smooth as silk and a grin wider than the Grand Canyon, promised to awaken the dormant lion within him. Fred, inspired, decided to roar at his alarm clock the next morning. The result? A terrified cat, a disgruntled neighbor, and a sore throat. No beast was unleashed, but Fred did learn that his cat could jump 6 feet high. Next, he stumbled upon a guru who swore by the power of positive affirmations. "Say it, believe it, achieve it," she chanted. Taking her advice to heart, Fred spent an entire afternoon whispering sweet nothings to his half-eaten sandwich, hoping to transform it into a gourmet meal. The sandwich remained a sandwich, but on the bright side, Fred discovered a newfound appreciation for his culinary skills. Then came the concept of seizing the day. The guru, with an enthusiasm that could put a cheerleader to shame, urged his followers to grab life by the horns. Fred, ever the diligent student, took the advice quite literally. He spent the better part of the day wrestling with his wall calendar, attempting to seize Tuesday. His efforts were fruitless, but Fred did manage to give his living room a rather avant-garde, postmodern redecoration. Through his hilarious misadventures, Fred began to realize that not all advice, even if it comes from a highly enthusiastic guru with a flair for dramatic metaphors, is to be taken literally. Motivation, he discovered, comes not from external sources but from within. So Fred learned that seizing the day doesn't mean literally wrestling with the calendar. Sometimes motivation comes from the most unexpected places. For Fred, it was his refrigerator. Believe it or not, our friend Fred here found a profound source of motivation in the most unlikely of places, a barren, echoey refrigerator. You see, Fred had a deep-seated love for food, the kind that would make a gourmet chef blush. But alas, a love as deep as this requires constant fueling, and Fred's refrigerator was as empty as a politician's promise. One fateful morning, Fred, still in his polka-dot pajamas, shuffled to the kitchen, dreaming of a cheese sandwich. He flung open the refrigerator door, but was met with a gust of cold, empty air. No cheese, no bread, no nothing. His dream of a cheese sandwich was shattered, much like his motivation to do anything else that day. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of sinking into the couch, Fred felt a sudden burst of energy. His love for food, particularly the cheese sandwich, awakened a determination in him that he hadn't felt in years. He was like a superhero, but instead of a cape, he had a shopping list. And instead of superpowers, he had a rumbling stomach. With a fervor that would have put an Olympic sprinter to shame, Fred bolted out the door. He was a man on a mission to refill his refrigerator and reclaim his cheese sandwich dream. Fred, who had never been much of a morning person, was now running down the street, his polka-dot pajamas flapping in the wind. The neighborhood kids cheered him on, their laughter ringing through the air. And what do you know? Fred returned victorious, his arms laden with grocery bags. He was panting, his hair was a mess, and his pajamas were even more disheveled than before. But he had a twinkle in his eye and a spring in his step. He had found his motivation in the unlikeliest of places, and was now ready to take on the world, one cheese sandwich at a time. And that's how a cheese sandwich turned Fred into a go-getter. Motivation is a strange beast, isn't it? Just ask Fred. Now, Fred's journey has been a wild one, hasn't it? From the rebellious alarm clock to the guru who was more interested in his breakfast than enlightenment, Fred has been on quite the roller coaster ride. And what did he learn? That motivation isn't a one-size-fits-all concept. You see, Fred discovered that motivation is like a pair of trousers. Yes, trousers. Stick with me here. Imagine walking into a store, seeing a pair of trousers on a mannequin and saying, "Yes, those trousers will fit me perfectly, no need to try them on." Sounds ridiculous, right? Well, that's exactly what we do when we try to adopt someone else's motivation. Fred discovered this the hard way. Instead of finding a one-size-fits-all solution, he found that motivation is as unique as a fingerprint. It's tailor-made, just like bespoke trousers. Now, how did this revelation impact Fred's life? Well, he stopped trying to fit into someone else's trousers, metaphorically speaking, of course. Instead, he started to understand what really drove him. He realized that his motivation was not the sound of an alarm clock or the words of a guru. It was the smell of freshly brewed coffee in the morning, the satisfaction of ticking off tasks from his to-do list, and the joy of a well-deserved nap in the afternoon. Fred's life became a lot more satisfying once he started marching to the beat of his own drum, or should we say, sipping his own cup of coffee. In the end, Fred's journey taught us that motivation is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's a personal journey of discovery, a bit like trying to find the perfect pair of trousers. So remember folks, motivation might be tricky, but at least it's not as confusing as assembling an IKEA shelf. Until next time, stay motivated and stay hilarious.